I think one of the main things what you can see is from companies they're asking from how can I comply?
Even though his hair may say something different, he has a very modern vision.
Hello, folks out in the Simply Trade podcast land. Well, I got to tell you, we've got quite, with all the trade talks, with all the different things going on, I'm really interested in talking about today's show in that, we're looking at things and have been talking about things from a U.S. perspective. I am really looking forward to getting on the other side of the table here, if you will, of getting some opinions, development, the trade, the industry from a European perspective. How about you?
Do you know what a hat trick is? A hat trick in sports? I know our guests will know exactly what that is because they're in soccer or not. Oh, sorry, guys, not soccer, football.
Yeah, their version of football.
Yes, football. So a hat trick is when one player scores 3 goals or more in one game. So this is our hat trick. This is our third European show in a row.
Right, that's true.
So this is my hat trick, I guess. This is the closest that a podcast can get into a hat trick. So anyway, just a little fun there. But so we have a couple of folks from the EU, the Netherlands to be more exact. And they are the founders of a company called CATTS, CATTS, CATTS. They were, I've seen them around. Well, I've seen their folks that are in the States or in Mexico, in the region, let's call it, at several conferences that we attend. And one of them, she's must be in sales because she was very outgoing, and she came out and asked if we can have the founders on our show. And so here we are. So we have Peter and Nick Butlers from CATTS, like I said, and so we have them on the show. I want to just give a quick intro for both of them, and so they are both the founders of CATTS. Like I said, actually, Peter goes way back into the 80s doing trade, and his background actually started from way back in the day before automation, when paper trail and all that. And sadly to say, I also actually remember we were talking before the show, and we were talking about how I was in my research. I found how he came from his history came from a very similar route where we might have actually crossed paths. We didn't, but we could have, I guess, at one point. My company was getting bought out, or was looked at getting bought out by the company he worked for, and so anyway, that was really interesting. So he did start his career in '83 and as a Dutch customs official. There's a long history there, which we talked off camera, and if you'd like, you can probably see in his about page. And Nick, he is the CEO and also co-founder of CATTS. He also came from a strong background, mostly in IT, and hopefully I'm getting this right, and I'm getting this all off the internet. And of course, you got to believe everything you see on the internet. And their firm now is over 120 employees, and I'm sure they'll correct me also if I'm wrong. But welcome, guys, Nick and Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yes, sir. So did I get the Netherlands part right at least?
Perfect. Yes.
Go orange, right? Or what do you guys say? Is that what you say? Go orange, or I don't know. You guys probably say something different. I know y'all always wear that big the orange. I was actually looking for an orange shirt, so I couldn't get one. So.
Yes, no. Part of the Netherlands is Holland, so many people call it Holland. But then you maybe getting some angry viewers or listeners from a different part of the Netherlands who don't consider themselves part of Holland. So, yeah.
Okay.
I love the Netherlands. I've a good friend of mine. We used to work together at FedEx. He, of course, there in the Netherlands, and I was coming over to Europe quite often. And Eric Van Knife, and he, I tell you, the Dutch folks are so hospitable. It is just fantastic. It was great. Very straight laced at first, and then we would laugh and carry on. So it's like it is. I love your country and that region over there. So it's wonderful. Especially love those. All I call them is like pressed waffle cookies or something like that. I don't know. I forget what you call those, but they are so good. I love it. So Peter, it looks like you've been around since dirt, just like Lalo and myself, huh?
That's right. Yes.
You have probably seen all kinds of things. And Nick, oh my gosh, I am sure that being around your dad, there's stories and things you've gleaned from and the experiences you've been developing some things. So have you been able to kick him into the 21st century or has he been fighting you on that?
No, I must say that already before my career started, we were already discussing how to automate and make smarter decisions in global trade. I remember as a teenager, he explained me a little bit about classification and ECCN codes, and we started building this access database together with this decision tree. So I think even though his hair may say something different, he has a very modern vision.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, how do we want to start with this? Is that as far as the obviously trade talks, the new administration's come in and within a very short period of time, I mean, international trade's been flipped upside down as far as policies, negotiations, trade agreements and all. And with what you're having to do and everybody's trying to keep up with things, what are the questions, what are the challenges that people that you're seeing, your customers and all of that, and your perspective on things right now?
I think one of the main things what you can see is from companies that are asking from how can I comply? Because things are changing, things are complex, and especially in all the years I worked in trade compliance, we started without no computers and no mobile phones, so there was nothing, and then everything was tangible. And you had to look in really meters of books to find the article to tell you what to do or what not to do. So I think that's the challenge within business, how to comply in changing environments.
So where do you go with this? Is that in trying to reassure people? Because at this point, when things are changing so much, I mean, I usually will tell folks, and we're going to think, sometimes you have to just wait. You don't let your emotions get caught up to make a decision. Let the dust settle a little bit, or try and figure out strategically where and when to move. How about y'all there?
Yeah, I think one of the first things what we in our profession what we should do. There's a saying in the Netherlands which is Jip en Janneke. And Jip en Janneke is a language written for little children, so Dutch language written for little children to understand it. And I believe that we should write or explain or supervise or advise companies in a Jip en Janneke language. So to make the laws more understandable and tangible.
It's really interesting that you say that, because when I use AI, I always do that. I get the regular, when I'm doing my research, either for the show or for our training company, or when we're talking to a client for consulting, whatever, I might be doing some research and doing AI. And as it says all the laws or, just all the real legal stuff, I always end or continue my conversation by saying, can you explain this as if I was a 10-year-old? And it actually does a really good job of doing that, and it makes it clear. It's also actually easier to explain to someone using that that technique. So, anyways,
but he's not telling you that's the way he has to, talk to me that way. See, for me to understand it. Now, we have the KISS method is keep it simple, stupid kind of a thing. And it's like, it's to your point. That's excellent. I will say the other, though, is as you're looking at it, as you're saying, keeping it, very, simplistic. I guess the other side is going back to making sure you have a solid foundation. How can you stay compliant? Well, you got to go back to your fundamentals of, do you have accurate information? Are your people trained? Are you crossing the T's and dotting the I's, as we would say, and all that? Do you take that same approach to go back and say, before you start getting too advanced in some of the international trade here and making deals and contracts and whatever, do you go back and say, well, let's look at what you're doing and make sure that you got a solid foundation?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because when I worked with a US company for many years, the manufacturing side, they need to understand the laws and regulations. Because, for instance, if you make a technical device and it had component 1, 2, and 3, and that was really heavily controlled, but the customer only needs point 1 and 2, then why not designing 1 and 2 where you have less controlled mechanism? So that start with the foundation of building something and what is the need, but you really need to understand the possibilities and the impossibilities of a law to do your things. And if you don't have that in-house, then you need to get it before you start acting.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that was maybe already relevant before the age of AI and automation. So I know my father always has this anecdote from back in his customs days, right?
Yeah, you mean about my drilling sergeant? Yeah, my when I was a custom officer, I always studied, and my chef was a drilling sergeant. And he could stand beside my desk and said, "You need to read the document. You need to understand the document and not look at the picture." And that's what we need to do today as well with data. We need to read and understand the data and not looking only at numbers and figures.
Well, I got to tell you, Nick, Peter, both. That right there is so many people, especially our younger generation, seem to they go in for the quick, maybe a headline, whatever, and all of a sudden they think they've got something, and they'll go ahead and project out, or, all right, I've already got it figured out. There's a lot of details. You need to stop, look, and read the information. But the other thing, Peter, you just said, you got to understand it. If you don't understand it, you need to step back a little bit and break that down. And as the old adage of how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time, break it down to what you do understand, and then focus on what you don't and try and educate yourself. But to that point, I guess one of the things that y'all had put forward here is like, what are the lessons that we've learned from the paper-based era, no computers, all paper, translated into today's world?
So what you can see from that, Andy, is that when we were in before 1993, we were in a paper environment where every set of documents was based on the intention you want to do. So we had colored documents for export. We had all specific documents for imports, and it's all fancy colors because then it was easy to understand. And every template was different.
You still have that with the ATA Carnet, is the different colors too, don't you?
Yes, exactly. But that, I think that they're talking about an e-carnet, but that's still talking. And
yeah, for decades they've been talking.
No, but in one way it was easy because you could see on the color of a document what you were going to do or what you had to do. When in 1988 Sakita came, that was the first electronic system in the Netherlands, and the Netherlands from the EU was one of the first with starting with the electronic system. Then you were keying in this colored documents in the system by hand, and then the system would tell you what you should do. Look at the documents, physical examination. We had risk models, etc. in that. But in 1993, those documents what trade within the EU were moved. There was no import and export anymore. But then suddenly there was an extra task for trade because they had to report for statistics, because in the past every document had a copy for statistics. But now it was not applicable anymore, so trade had to do that. And that's what you can see if we look in the future at single window, where for certified partners, only the export is required and the import declaration will be taken away, but you still have to pay the duties. But that obligation to collect all the correct, complete, and compliant information is with the trader. And to pay the correct number of duties is with the trader. And then after 3 months, they might be audited. And if something goes wrong, the trader will be punished because they didn't. So we are looking at automation. We are looking at a faster process, but there are more and more tasks which were not in the past coming to traders where they need to comply with. And if they don't do it correctly, they are in a bad situation.
I'm going to ask you something because the way you were describing that, I want to see if I picked up on something correctly, is that if doing the export, filing of information, documents, digital information, whatever, is that will eventually take the place of the import, so that somebody's export, that data will be then, I would assume, somehow in this process transmitted over to the importing country and taking the information from the exporter. Is that kind of the concept?
If you look at the WCO, that is where they would like to aim for. And the single window and the one-stop shop, that was in beginning of 2010, then it will happen. And then it became 2014, and then it became 2017. Now they talk about 2030, 2032. But it's still not there. And I think it's the same with the ECANet. We talk a lot about it, but it's complex because there's so many countries. And if you look today in trade, there are the regions with contradicting information, or at least interest. So then you need to trust that the export from one country will be accepted by the other country, and that's still far away.
Well, I was just going to say is that it goes from a standpoint where I guess the WCO, which for those that are listening, that's the World Customs Organization. I always categorize it as a trade association for customs entities in governments around the world. And they try and get together and work together on different rules and acceptance and all that. But the point being is what it sounds like they're trying to, I guess, deal with is having an export declaration saying one thing, and then the import declaration that doesn't match, it's saying something else. So, somebody may declare a lower value for export purposes to avoid export taxes, et cetera, versus then the import is going to be a higher value and all these other things. So there's conflict in information, potentially conflict of the parties to the transactions may be different. That would be something where if there's things that countries and customs work together from different countries around the world, boy, that would highlight any discrepancies really quick, wouldn't it?
Yes. Yeah, and that's also where we are within our company, where we are looking at technology to get a complete stream from manufacturing, export to final import and consumption to get that aligned, because that's the end of the road where they want to aim for.
How we were, paper based, and we're now we're going towards paperless. And but I guess, Nick, you've seen the evolution of from your father's career from the very beginning. And now as CEO, obviously, from the bio that and information and background that I read from you is that a big part of your task is like the automation, integration, and just basically on the implementation of systems throughout organizations. So how do you see that? Maybe that role changing for those compliance managers, going from, I guess as little as even 5 years. I'm assuming things have changed dramatically. and even more so now going forward, now with AI. What do you see, I guess, in that aspect? With the automation and the technology coming in and moving from that, what you used to probably see back in the day with when you probably saw your dad working through with paper and now automated.
Yeah, I think from a business side, the same way that we are more moving towards data-driven processes, the authorities are also moving more towards this data-driven supervision instead of a direct control of transactions, and that makes it for a compliance manager even more important to have the same monitoring and control over your data. So we're going maybe back to really understanding the context of what's on a piece of paper or what's in your data. The compliance manager needs to be aware of that context because if you're going to have smarter systems, you're going to have bad data, then you're going to be presented with something that sounds plausible or that looks complete. But if you don't know the detail, if you're not aware of the regulations, then you may be tricked by your own systems.
Yeah, I see that where sometimes when we're at a conference or something and someone says, I can use AI to classify my part. And what they don't realize is that AI hallucinates a lot. You know what I mean? And you need to have a software provider that very specifically wrote that application to do classification, and those are really good. Actually, those are actually really good as compared to just a generic ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity or whatever you might find, and just getting on there and say, "Hey, what is this?" You describe it, and it could hallucinate on you. So.
No, exactly that. You need to have a system that's able to put the AI in the right context. So not over all the data it's been trained on for the past decades from around the world, but really specific to your data. But that's also the challenge, I think, for still the next years to come, is to get the right data from all your different systems, because I think a lot of compliance managers are struggling with that. Their data is, because of different mergers and acquisitions, maybe within their company, it's very siloed. There may be multiple ERP systems. There is product data in different product databases, and there may be policies that prevent exchange of system information even within the company because of IP rights or whatever. So that connecting those systems and providing those smart tools with the right information, that's the challenge.
Peter, you started to say something too there.
I was just, what you said about ChatGPT, I remember one of the ICPA events where Nick was speaking about technology. He mentioned that within ChatGPT, you could, in those days, ask a question: how deeply do I need to plant a laptop to get a laptop tree? And then you get a whole story about how deep to plant it and when you can harvest the laptops.
Yeah, at least they'd be originating in that country, so you don't have to go through any trouble of trying to figure out if they're originating or not, if they grow from the trees. They're definitely originating because I planted it. I know I did.
Nick, let me ask you a question here. All right, so you mentioned that you and your father have been talking, well before you even forming the company and going on with this and talking about, maybe the vision for how the trade should, evolve, if you will, and all that. Have you taken like some of his vision and yours as well, and then actually, if you would, put rubber to the road kind of a thing to actually develop systems, or have you guys pulled things together from a services perspective, or what have you been doing to provide the products you do to your clients?
Yeah, so we started 9 years ago, And actually, my father came with the idea of starting the company together. He said, well, I have so many ideas and concepts I want to work out. But yeah, within the company, you don't get enough space to really have that entrepreneurial, to carry out that entrepreneurial vision. So, well, I said, if you want to do that before you retire, then we have to start now. And that was 9 years ago. So we did that. We started with the two of us. We started more with services, but 5 years ago, through the operational support that we provide with our team, we also saw there's a need for more practical oriented tools, because you can have great conceptual visions of how data should be in a data highway. But in the end, what people are really struggling with is that they are sending a PDF document in an email, and that the data becomes unreadable. And that's how data is shared between companies and between different divisions within a company even. So those are the day-to-day challenges. And that's how we started building our tools to make those day-to-day challenges smarter and more efficient.
Well, and with that, and Peter, this is one thing too, is that as with your vision of pulling this together and basically giving Nick maybe some marching orders to see, try and develop something here and all that, I'm sure he's made you very, very proud, because obviously he's a sharp fella. One of the questions I've got is, how has blockchain, blockchain has kind of come, everything was going to be blockchain. It was going to solve everybody's problems as far as things. And it's kind of just gone by the wayside. And I know people were trying to lock things down to the very thing, like an example, it's declared one way in exports and a different way in imports or something, and blockchain was a way in concept, to try and lock down information in the supply chain arena. Blockchain works very well in the financial world, but I haven't seen, really the true ROI on blockchain in the supply chain as of yet. I see better in AI technology applications and automating different things. But what's your thought on that?
Yeah, first of all, I need to start. I'm not allowed to say blockchain. So let's. I think that's a nice start. But I think for multinational,
it's a nice concept, but I don't know if it.
Yeah, but for multinational companies, the end-to-end visibility is something what is added value. But if you look today on the e-commerce, etc., and blockchain, Nick, but it's far from realism. It's not possible for the smaller B2C business or like e-commerce business, but for multinationals it is.
Yeah, I think blockchain, it's actually, from a technological perspective, it's a combination of multiple technologies like encryption, decentralization, having this decentralized ledger. It's a combination of multiple technologies that in themselves are very strong concepts. And those are also parts of blockchain technology that we implement in our systems. But yes, blockchain in its true nature, really a decentralized ledger that's also visible openly. That's not something that's very practical. But I think if you take out the individual strong points of a blockchain, you can use that to your advantage in systems.
Well, the concept was nice, to lock down data, the date and time stamping, and saying, well, this is what's been presented and whatever, and it can't be changed. Well, if there's a mistake and all that, and it made it difficult it was not flexible in some things. As long as you're doing a historical, documentation, okay, you're fine. But it just hasn't worked as what was originally promised in the concept. But in today's world, let me change questions. Again, you've got another good question here I like is like, how are, especially Peter, from your perspective, how are the regulatory roles changing in today's world with two things? One, you've got, well, actually three. You've got the digitization of a lot of what used to be paper. You've got the use of AI technologies that the governments are using for, cargo security, for fraud, those kinds of things, or accurate declarations and all that, and assessing that and looking at all that. But then three, also with the trade negotiations going on and all, how are regulatory roles changing? Are they going more for enforcement, or is it just kind of overwhelming right now? What do you think's happening?
It's in Holland. We have a custom officer. His name is Frank Heijman, and he is really super on the modern way of looking at customs and trade together. And as we said, the international trade is complex. It's changing. Extra requirements, ESG, CBAM. There's always something new coming on top of it. And so we cannot live without technology anymore to comply. We need technology to get all those rules applicable on your supply chain. But it's also we mentioned earlier WCO and their plan. We can see that customs authorities are getting more and more aligned together. They're sharing experiences, and so I believe it's a long process, because we started with 2010 when it should happen, and now we talk about 2030, 2032, but it will happen, and it's we need to work towards that to comply with that future standard.
Well, with the corporate citizens, the good corporate citizens or good, business citizens, if you will, as long as they're making the effort to go from the very beginning all the way through to make sure their information's accurate, it's in representing whatever transaction is taking place, country of origin or country manufacturer, all those things are done, the valuation's there, the appropriate declarations and all that. Most companies are going to won't have really an issue other than just complying with whatever the policies are. It's those that are trying to circumvent the process, and hopefully the new technology and things will allow those good corporate citizen shipments to move on through. And the bad, if you will, the bad stuff, or the bad folks that are trying to pull something, their stuff is what's going to get held up.
Yeah, you're right. And also take in consideration that I just read a report this week that in the EU from 2023 to 2024, the number of transactions were doubled and are now 4.6 billion on an annual base. And in Holland, we have around 340 million transactions every year with 4,000 or 5,000 custom officers. And so it's also from the authorities' point of view, it's getting more and more complex to control everything, or to keep visibility on everything.
Well, I think the onus is getting put more again on, you were talking about the trader, the importer, the exporter to, in the U.S., the laws and regulations put more and more onus on the actual importer or the exporter to ensure they're doing things correctly, rather than on customs to try and catch all this. It's like if there's something wrong, they're going to come out, and then from an enforcement, they're going after the people that are involved with that.
Yeah, that's the same here as well. What you can see right now, the development, especially on the e-commerce world, that EU authorities are working to get DDP shipments, only e-commerce DDP shipments, and then the importer. And so there need to be an importer. So often there's no importer. So that's the service provider who will become the representative, but they will get fully liable for the content.
Yeah, to me, that's been always one of those on the e-commerce. It's things mushroom so much that requiring a DDP. And for those that, again, look at it, that's delivery duty paid. That means that you have the seller is going to be responsible for clearing those items through customs at the destination country. So they're a non-resident importer in a DDP type transaction. Therefore, if somebody, XYZ company, is selling e-commerce shipments, small shipments, whatever, to somebody, that shipper seller is going to be responsible for all of that. And that'd be one way to, because that's a privilege. That's not a right for people just to be able to ship things. And like the couple of, Temu and Shenzhen or Shein, excuse me, that were shipping things, and they could care less on country of origin. They could care less on, they doubled down on the forced labor situation and all that. Well, forcing a DDP transaction, Peter, that's actually, that holds them accountable, and either they comply or they're not going to be able to sell their goods into the country, right?
Correct. And then also the threshold from 150 euros will be dismantled. So now, if you order something from 2 euros out of China, you need to declare it.
I will say this, and we're talking about the de minimis deal there, is it's really a shame that it's gotten to this point, because the other side of this is it's going to, all those transactions, when you're declaring those low dollar items, it's going to clog the customs system with all these low dollar entries or declarations that have to be processed. And I mean, you would have a €5 shipment that is standing in the way of maybe a 50,000 euro shipment kind of thing, but it's all those transactions have to be processed. Yes, computer technology has become more robust, but it's, again, the way I always look at it is it's like going through the airport, and you're going to board an aircraft, a passenger flight or whatever, and you have all these, thousands of people ahead of you in the security line, and you're just trying to get through, and you're going, this is crazy. Where they could have gone right on through, but it's like, anyway.
I think for those kind of companies, the same as you have in an airport, some premium membership where you can get a fast lane through customs or through the security checks. The same way you're going to have the CTPAT or the AEO type of programs become more important for traders who have those high value shipments to get through a green lane.
Nick, that is an outstanding point. That puts more emphasis, like you said, on the AEO, the trusted trader programs, doing, participating in the CTPAT program over in the U.S. is doing the things you can do that would give you preferential treatment in the clearance process, because you're taking the extra time, effort, and money put forth to ensure cargo security, ensuring, compliance. That's an outstanding point. Any last words here? We need to wrap things up, but any last words from you regarding, as far as international trade right now, and especially from a European perspective? Where are the opportunities that we may have as far as generating international trade here in this world?
Start, Nick, or shall I?
A difficult question.
Okay, I believe that what is required is even more enforced partnership between trade and the authorities, because both cannot do that on their own. And it's not limited to the Netherlands or to any country. It should be interregional. So if you got a shipment between the Netherlands and the US, both traders, trading companies, trading partners, and the authorities need to cooperate together to get that, first of all, controlled, but also what you mentioned earlier, Andy, protected against people with bad intention.
Well, you all have built a very large enterprise, and I see that you're like in over 50 countries. So I see that you also deal in other places other than just the EU. So I mean, your growth or your expansion or your reach, let's say, is quite large. So I'm sure you get to see a lot from all regions, and so that was good to have you all and understand a little bit about your perspective on trade. So.
All right, folks, we're going to have their contact information and company information on our show notes there. And in looking at, let me, do you pronounce your last name Bolters? Is that
Bolters? Yes, that's
Bolters, right. Yeah. It wasn't Butler, it was Bolters.
Yes, it's common.
Oh yeah, listen, man, where are y'all actually located? You're in almost everything centers around Amsterdam, but I mean, where are y'all located?
I'm actually in Amsterdam, so if I open the curtains, you can probably see some of the typical Amsterdam buildings. But Peter is a little bit more north. I
love it. Peter, are you there as well, or what?
I'm an Amsterdam native, but I live in the countryside, 65 kilometers north of Amsterdam, 2 kilometers from the North Sea.
I got to tell you, it is a beautiful country and just some great people, and y'all have been absolutely fantastic. We hope to have you back at some point as things change and get your perspective on things.
Always welcome. Thanks very much. We appreciate it.
Yes, thanks for having us again, and looking forward to talking.
Yes, thank you both.
Thank you so much for listening to us. Like us, share us, and make comments. Reach out to Lalo and myself, and if you want to hear more, if you got some ideas on some topics and all that you want to hear about, let us know. So with that, Lalo, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you all. Have a good one.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.